Depositors in Greece and Spain are increasingly moving their money out of those countries as fears continue to mount about the future of the Eurozone. I'm Louise Story, reporting for Business Day Live. We'll take a look at Michigan, where mining is making a comeback. And in the Netherlands, there's a new hotel that's been set up to help people get quick divorces. But first, we're joined by Thomas Cooley, a professor at New York University, to discuss the crisis in Europe. Good morning.
Good morning, Louise.
So you probably saw, we've got people increasingly in Spain and in Greece, regular depositors and companies moving their money. Why are they so afraid? Isn't Europe backing those banks?
Well, I think there's a lot of uncertainty about the extent to which the banks will be backed. There's a lot of uncertainty about the size and solvency of the deposit insurance funds, and that's causing a lot of unrest in Spain about Spanish banks. And so depositors are increasingly nervous.
Well, one of the things you heard European leaders talking about this week is maybe the need for some sort of Eurozone-wide deposit insurance, kind of like the United States has the FDIC. They don't have anything right now for all of Europe.
They don't have any kind of financial architecture that deals with the Eurozone as a whole. And people have advocated for years that they create a Europe-wide deposit insurance fund. There's resistance to it on the part of the Germans, who fear their exposure in the event of such a fund. But that was one of the great innovations of the 1930s.
Here in the United
States, when we created the FDIC. And if you do it right, if it's a full insurance fund, then it should be funded by the banks that are creating the risks that
there could be a bank run,
yes.
Right? So the German and French leaders were meeting again this week. We have a little bit of a change in the cast of characters since we have a new French leader. How is the dialogue changing between the countries?
Well, the dialogue is changing. There's more of a drumbeat for a little less emphasis on austerity and a little more emphasis on stimulus and promoting longer-term structural reforms that will help the periphery countries to grow.
Do you think that all these cuts that we've already seen in Greece and that are happening in other places have slowed the economies there?
There's no question that they have. Austerity is not a pleasant medicine to have to take, but there's very little choice at this point. So the problem is that these countries face no good choices, and the reluctance on the part of Europe to view this as a Europe-wide problem is kind of halting the dialogue about how to move forward.
Right, because basically they need to make cuts to get their budgets in line, but they also need their economies improved to make enough money to have their budgets in good shape, and so that's the trade-off.
Exactly. It's like a choice between King Kong and Godzilla. There are no good choices.
And people are starting to talk about the possibility of Greece leaving the Eurozone more as, when will it happen, rather than whether it will happen. And I'm just wondering, if Greece does leave, if the Eurozone even goes away, how does that affect America in the long run? Would that be good or bad for us here?
Well, continued unrest in the Eurozone is really bad for us. It's a real drag on our recovery. And
the uncertainty.
So the uncertainty is really a problem. I think Greece leaving the Eurozone per se is going to be very bad for Greece, for the Greek citizens. I think.
And why is that?
Because they're going to face immediately a high inflation. Their export sector is really not very well developed. It's not going to help them that much. So they're going to face continued economic contraction, and they're going to be locked out of capital markets.
They won't be able to borrow money.
Exactly.
Because who would lend money to Greece right now?
Exactly.
From around the world?
Exactly. I think the rest of the Eurozone will survive that. They've planned for it. It's been obvious that this was a very likely outcome for a while. So I think the biggest losers in that are going to be the Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it also just adds to the uncertainty that we all have to deal with, including in the U.S., and it adds the uncertainty about the solvency of the
Europe.
financial system.
Europe. Well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we might have that uncertainty for a while longer. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Some of the world's largest mining companies have homed in on a new destination, Michigan. It's a place that fell out of favor for miners decades ago. Joining us now from Chicago to discuss the trend is Emily Lambert, a freelance writer. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
So why are mining companies flocking to the northern part of Michigan?
They're flocking there because there are a lot of materials and ore in the ground that could be worth a whole lot of money at these market prices now for metals.
But why haven't they been there, the past 30 years?
Well, they actually were there a good century ago, a century and a half ago, and they left anywhere from like 1920s to 1960s because it just became uneconomical to take the ore out of the ground. Now it's economical again.
Because of the high commodities prices.
Right, because of the high commodities prices.
And so your article in the Times today featured a town called Ironwood, and there's actually been an exodus of people there in recent years. Men have been leaving their families to go work the oil fields in North and South Dakota. Are there enough workers there now to serve the mines that are opening?
There are. I say that not as a mining company. They are, of course, the ones who have to make that call. The question really, though, and you're asking a good one, is how many local people will be put to work in these projects? And that's a big consideration, not just because are they qualified for mining, but also are they qualified for high-tech mining of the day? They may have been working in the mines in the 1960s, but mining in the 1960s is a very different situation than mining today.
So they could need some worker training. We're getting a lot of indications that China's economy is slowing. Retail sales there are falling and real estate prices are falling. And of course, China has driven a lot of the demand for commodities. So if the Chinese economy struggles, do you think we'll still see enough demand for all these new mines in Michigan?
That's the million-dollar question, but overall, yes. And the reason is even if the Chinese economy slows and the demand there falls, which would be significant pressure on metals prices, there are other reasons that mining in this area right now is attractive. One of them is the low price of other energy types, which makes producing steel in the Midwest a fairly competitive, low-cost venture. And in that case, having mining close by to major steel producers is a reason to
do it there. Thanks so much for joining us, Emily.
Thank you.
A Dutch hotel that markets itself as a place for low-cost, low-stress divorces may be coming to the United States. A prominent divorce lawyer says it highlights a problem for many couples. When it comes to the cost of breaking up, some people are just priced out.
Divorce Hotel. You check in married on Friday and check out divorced on Sunday. A Dutch entrepreneur launched this service in the Netherlands.
Het is een succesvolle formule om op een goede manier uit elkaar te kunnen gaan.
Now he plans to bring it to the U.S., and there's even talk of a reality show. But will it work here? This is David Gillen for Business Day Live. I sat down with Robert Cohen, one of the most feared divorce attorneys in America, to see if a 5-star weekend could ease the pains of a divorce.
It's a great reality TV show, and we do need ways to expedite people getting divorced. But getting two people together who really don't like each other in New York or in any of the other urban centers and get them to just check into a hotel for a weekend and come out with a deal, I think is very unlikely here.
It doesn't sound to me, though, like also that any of your clients who tend to be very high-end, let me just read a few here. We've got Mayor Mike Bloomberg you've handled, Henry Kravis, Christy Brinkley, goes on from there. Not the kind of simple cases that would lend themselves to this sort of mediation.
Complicated cases take a long time. Assets have to be divided up in some way. They have to be valued. Children have to be evaluated by custody experts.
This idea with the Divorce Hotel is to get a mediator in there. And you're seeing a rise in mediation and arbitration, right?
A big increase because the courts are clogged.
Now, I have read stories about people who literally can't afford to get divorced.
There are a lot of people in this world who don't have a lot of money and who don't need a long time and spend a lot of money with lawyers to get divorced. And for those people, there's a lot more mediation, a lot more expedited ways to get through the system. I don't think a 3-day weekend at the Peninsula Hotel is going to do it.
That's all for today. Please stay with us online at nytimes.com for our continuing coverage. I'm Louise Story, reporting for Business Day Live. Thanks for watching.